Good morning. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Welcome to First Universalist Unitarian Church. My name is Jim Moss. I'm a member of this congregation. A warm welcome to any visitors this morning. Do we have any visitors? Okay, we got one. We encourage you to join us after the service for coffee in the atrium. We have red mugs reserved for newcomers so that we can easily identify and get to know you. Since 1858, Wausau has been a vital voice for liberal religion in central Wisconsin. We are an intentionally free and inclusive community that welcomes everyone, regardless of age, sexual orientation, ethnicity, or economic status. Wherever you are on life's journey, you belong here. Between Sundays, we invite you to participate in our events and classes during the week. Be sure to subscribe to the church's newsletter and follow us on Facebook or Instagram for updates. I'd like to share a few announcements. Please silence any electronic devices. Save the date. There's a monthly community potluck. Every first Sunday of the month after service, our congregation comes together for a community potluck lunch. On October 5th, the meal will be hosted by our music director, Margaret Jers, and the UU Choir. Bring along a favorite dish if you'd like, or simply come as you are. Everyone is welcome at this warm and inclusive gathering, where good food and good company create space for conversation, connection, and community. We hope to see you there. Join us for Learn, Practice, Share, a mindfulness community. We'll gather tonight at 6:30 and every Sunday evening at this church. Expect guided meditation, stress relief tools, and supportive community. It's free, open to all, and no experience is needed. Come as you are, leave with peace and strength. Women's Early Risers invites all women to join us for breakfast on Saturday, September 20th at 8:30 at Tri-City Restaurant. Come for good food, conversation, and community every third Sunday of the month. Interested in joining? Reach out to Leanne Vini or contact the church office. I'd like to add, near the entrance, across the hallway from the coat racks, they have fair trade coffee available for sale or for a donation. You might want to consider that now because I just saw on the news that the cost of chocolate is going to double because of the tariffs. And outside, there's a composting bin. It has the big letters HSU, which is pronounced Sue. They use table scraps. Instead of throwing them in the compost, you can throw them in there, and they'll grind them up and put them on farm fields instead of chemicals. Okay, we turn now to opening words and chalice lighting. We're going to light the chalice. The words are in your order of service. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of commitment. We light the symbol of our faith as we gather together. We're going to sing together hymn number 346, Come Sing a Song with Me.
So, fun fact about today's story, I have been sitting on this book for over 5 years, just waiting for the perfect Sunday to bring it out. And when I saw this week's service blurb was about when things are broken and can't be fixed, but the grace we find in those moments, I knew we had to do this story, and Rowan has graciously offered to help me with it. So no pressure, but you all need to love this book as much as I do. The story is The Rabbit Listened by Corey Dorfield.
One day, Taylor decided to build something new, something special, something amazing. Taylor was so proud. But then, out of nowhere, things came crashing down. The chicken was the first to notice.
Cluck, cluck, what's a shame? I'm so sorry this happened. Let's talk about it. Cluck, cluck.
But Taylor didn't feel like talking, so the chicken left. Next came the bear.
Grrr, how horrible. I bet you feel so angry. Let's talk about it and shout about it. Grrr, grrr.
But Taylor didn't feel like shouting, so the bear left. The elephant knew just what to do.
Trumpet-a-da, I know how to fix this. We just need to remember how to exactly put it back together, the way things were.
But Taylor didn't feel like remembering, so the elephant also left. One by one they came.
The hyena, let's laugh about it. The ostrich, gulp, let's hide and pretend nothing happened. The kangaroo, tisk tisk, what a mess, let's put this all away. And the snake, shh, let's go knock down somebody else's.
But Taylor didn't feel like doing anything with anybody. So eventually, they all left, until Taylor was alone. In the quiet, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit, but it moved closer and closer until Taylor could feel its warm body. Together they sat in silence until Taylor said, "Please stay with me." The rabbit listened. The rabbit listened as Taylor talked. The rabbit listened as Taylor shouted. The rabbit listened as Taylor remembered and laughed. The rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to hide, to throw everything away, and to ruin things for someone else. Through it all, the rabbit never left. And when the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plan to build it again. "I can't wait," Taylor said. "It's going to be amazing." The end.
Thank you. And I'm assuming all the ahs means you all love this book as much as I do, and I'm hoping you all have your own little rabbits. This morning actually starts back up our RE programs, so our preschoolers through fifth graders are invited downstairs to the basement for their classrooms. I'll give you a little hint. We've rearranged and added some new stuff. And our youth are invited upstairs to Walker Hall for youth group. They've also got some new stuff, and that's for 6th through 12th graders. So I'll invite you to bless those remaining here in the sanctuary and those heading off to RE right now with our children's song. The words are printed in your order of worship.
I'd like to invite everyone to join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. If you're comfortable doing so, I invite you to uncross your legs. You can put your feet flat and firm on the ground. We'll take just a couple of minutes or moments to get a comfortable spot in our bodies. And close your eyes if you'd like. Together we'll take a couple of full and deep breaths. With this first intentional breath, push it full and deep down into your stomach. Hold it a moment. And breathe out slowly. With this next one, full and deep up into your chest, let your shoulders rise up. And slowly breathe out. Here in this quiet, just take a moment to feel your beating heart, to grow in gratitude for the congregation this morning, for a warm day. Please join me in prayer. O loving Spirit of life in desperate times, all of us have cried, "Increase our faith," as though simply by asking, answers will come down like lightning. But we in our world hunger for good news. We want the broken whole, the sick well. We want prisoners freed and refugees to find home and community. We want to be part of your loving and creating body, part of your good news for the world. And though we want the easy answer, we understand that truth often comes slowly. Because we care, we carry with us the burdens and needs of others. So this hour we hold tenderly the victims and survivors of the shootings in Utah and Colorado, the people caught up in and fleeing the conflict in Ukraine, and all those people in our midst who suffer in secret. Hear us as we lift our prayers for those who need healing. Life Spirit, be present with us as we listen deeply for guidance. Now, dear friends, let us call to mind all the joys and sorrows in our lives, and let us meditate on them in silence together now. Amen. Let us stay seated as we sing prayer hymn number 205, Amazing Grace.
Our financial offerings today help sustain this congregation as a place where all voices can be heard, where truth can be spoken without fear, where vulnerability is met with compassion. The mission and ministry of UUWASA is made possible by the generous support of its friends and members. You can place a gift in the donation plate as it passes by. You can also visit our website, uuwasa.org, to make a one-time or recurring gift with your credit card or debit card. Thank you for your support. The offering will be now received.
For a sermon this morning, I selected a portion of the poem, The Art of Blessing the Day, by the poet Marge Piercy. I think whenever she wrote this poem, she was holding in tension how wonderful things can be and how terrible things can be. And I imagine you all can resonate with that a little bit. And the poet writes, "This is the blessing for a political victory. Although I shall not forget that things work in increments and epicycles and sometimes leaps that half the time fall back down. Let's not relinquish dancing while the music fits into our hips and bounces our heels. We must never forget pleasure as real as pain. The blessing for the return of a favorite cat, the blessing for love returned, for friends returned, for money received unexpected, the blessing for the rising of the bread, the sun, the oppressed. I'm not sentimental about old man mumbling the Hebrew by rote with no more feeling than one says Gesundheit. But the discipline of blessings is to taste each moment, the bitter, the sour, the sweet, and the salty, and be glad for what does not hurt. The art is in compressing attention to each little and big blossom of the tree of life, to let the tongue sing each fruit, its savor, its aroma, and its use. Attention is love. What we must give children, mothers, fathers, pets, our friends, the news, the woes of others. What we want to change, we curse and then pick up a tool. Bless whatever you can with eyes and hands and mouth. And if you can't bless it, get ready to make it new." There ends our reading. Well, good morning. Nice to see all of you. Margaret, thanks for your wonderful music as usual. Thanks to all of you for singing. You sound very good. For whatever reason, this past week, I've been thinking about back whenever I was a hospital chaplain. And when I was a hospital chaplain, I worked with these ER doctors who had this practice whenever situations would take a turn for the worse. It was always after a difficult case, right? The kind where multiple specialties would be called in to try to save someone's life. I don't know if any of you have ever been in a trauma bay in a hospital. It's a remarkable experience. Dozens of people are all working together, and they're all working just insanely hard to try to save someone's life. And so just in a matter of minutes, the room would always be an absolute and utter mess. Tubes, gauze, wrappers, just everything spread all over the floor, and all these people. And then, when it began to look like tragedy was near, the ER doctors at the hospital where I worked at, they had this thing that they did. They would demand that everyone stop. They would say, "Stop, I need everyone's attention." And everyone would look at the doctor. And then that doctor would lay out everything that had been done, all the medicine used, all the tests, all the time. And then that doctor, standing at the head of someone's bed, would ask everyone, whether you were a cleaning technician or a medical student or a resident physician, it didn't matter, a nurse, everyone was asked this question: can you think of anything else to try? This is often what you'd hear: silence. And when no one would speak, the doctor would look at the clock, and he or she would state the time, and they would make the pronouncement, and then they would call for me, right? They'd call for the chaplain. And I came to admire over all these years of doing this work how people so skilled, right? People who got into the best colleges, who did good in science, unlike me, right? They did good in math. These people who were so skilled and so smart, they would stand in front of everybody, people they were in charge of, and they would say, "I need help." And I can only speak for myself, but this is one of those weeks that made me ask for help. Did anybody else ask for help in your own way this week? I did. And the answer is, at least for me, they just aren't really coming super easily. And it's also the kind of week that makes me think it's somewhat pointless to plan my sermon topics that far in advance. I think I'm going to quit doing that, okay? There is so much happening in people's lives. There's so much happening in your lives. And then you read the news. The shooting in Colorado, the assassination in Utah. This is news you couldn't avoid if you had the same algorithms that I have on my phone. And then, of course, there was the aftershocks of far too many people who use social media or use their platforms to applaud a tragedy or to scapegoat, to score political points. I have no time for people like this. No time. And a lot of this stuff has made me think about a Greek tragedy, about the character Narcissus. You all remember Narcissus, right, when you were failing 5th grade Greek? Right? Narcissus is a figure from Greek mythology, and what did Narcissus do? Fell in love with his own reflection. Now, I'm not talking about clinical narcissism. I don't have the specialty to talk about that, but I pretend to sometimes. Specifically, what I'm talking about is the version of it that shows up in normal, healthy people. How many of you have ever met a narcissist before? Or seen one on TV? Yes, of course. So there's a part of narcissism in absolutely everyone. That's what the experts say. It's the part of us that has the ability to mock other people's pain. The part of us that doesn't even want to try to understand someone's point of view. I think it's important to let it sink in just how many people in the world live in fear. Like nations are at war. Cities in America are now being policed by the military. I haven't seen anything like that except when I traveled out of this country. College kids and their parents are afraid for safety. Black people and persons of color are still struggling in this country for equal access to basic institutions. LGBTQ people who just want permission to live and seek their own well-being. Undocumented families that you read about every day in the newspaper are scared. In this community here in Wausau, they are scared to take their children to school. Or there are folks who are entering a period of life where they live on a fixed income and they have no idea how they're going to keep paying their bills or keep the family home. Now, we don't have to be on the same political party. We don't have to agree on policies. We don't have to vote the same way. Heaven knows we don't. We can all see solutions differently. I think that's a good thing. But at a basic level, here's what I do think. I think all of us should be able to show compassion for people who are hurting and people who are scared. In fact, I actually think that's what we as church people have been called to do. There are a few people who gave us really good advice on this topic. Jesus said, love your neighbors as your what? As yourself. The Muslim poet Rumi has this wonderful line, and it says, your task is actually not to seek love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers in you that you have built against loving. And so this is the mandate, to love one another, to have compassion, to develop the capacity to see the world through someone else's eyes. And I think the best of us stumble every day into our identities. And what I mean by that is I got married almost 15 years ago, and I just sort of stumbled my way into the identity of a husband. I'll be the first to admit I had no idea what I was doing whenever I said I do. No idea. Or it's the same way 13 years ago whenever I became a father and I held my child for the first time. I looked down and I thought, I'm really sorry that I'm the guy you got to end up with. And so I just make it up as I go every day. We just get it wrong until we get it right. We get it wrong until we get it right. And how we get it right is by doing the work. We just do the work every single day. And at the end of the day, all my friends in recovery every week, often around the recovery tables, someone says something like this. At the end of the day, I pull out my journal or I sit down in a quiet chair in my bedroom and I ask this question, how can I be better? And there's this great line from St. Paul, and he says, we should rejoice with those who rejoice, and we should cry or mourn with those who mourn. And so in other words, what he's saying is that we should see and we should acknowledge the experiences of other people, even if that experience is not our own. And so my request of all of you today is that I hope that you, in your heart, you can make space for those people who are scared, for those whose experiences of the world are different than our own. And so when I couldn't figure out what to preach about, and I tried to write the sermon on Friday, and then I really had to write it on Saturday, I was going all around the internet whenever I was procrastinating, which is what I usually do, and I stumbled on this wonderful prayer called the social media user's prayer that I think captures like the spirit of the moment we're living in. Do any of you know the Serenity Prayer? Like if you're in a recovery group, you know the Serenity Prayer, of course, by heart. So this is sort of a riff on the Serenity Prayer. So instead of asking for integrity and courage and serenity and the ability to discern it, this is how this social media user's prayer goes. Are you ready for it? Nod your head or something if this resonates. God, grant me the cacophonous wrath about the things I cannot change, habitual neglect of the things I can change, and absolute ignorance to tell the difference. This is actually the end of the sermon. I was really struggling this week. It's not, but so this hit me. Like this prayer hit me. I pray this prayer all the time because it is so easy. It's so tempting to turn other people and their beliefs into props for our outrage, rather to engage them with something like an open heart. And so it reminded me of this conversation I had with a friend of mine who is a physician. We talk all the time. He's going through difficult stuff in his life, and some of what we're going through matches up right now. So the other day, we were talking really early on the phone. Both of us were jogging in our respective cities, talking on our ear pods. And I said, do you ever get tired of, like, people asking you, like, to look at their disgusting rash in their armpit, you know, or telling you they're disgusting? Do any of you work in the medical field and get this? Like, any of you? I get this as a minister all the time. People are like, I know you're not a doctor, but could you, like, look at this thing? You worked in a hospital, right? I hear that every once in a while. So I asked him, I said, do you ever get tired whenever people send you these disgusting pictures or tell you these revolting stories? And he said, actually I don't. He said, but I get it all the time. He said, in fact, my mom sends me a photo of something growing on her every single week. And so I said, you must get sick of this. And he surprised me. Here's what he said. He said, no, I really don't get sick of this. He said, I actually like it that my friends and my family feel comfortable enough to want to bring what they're going through to me. But he went on, he said, but I will say is sometimes people I haven't talked to in years, just people who I've friended up with on Facebook or people who only know me through my spouse, they will come right up to me and without even saying hello, they'll just say, hey, what's wrong with me? And I told him, I think I get what you're going through. I think I can resonate a little bit with this experience. And not that everybody asked me about their rashes, but too many people that I want to do ask me about their rashes. But I do. I deeply know what it's like for people to use me when it's convenient and then discard me when I no longer serve their purposes. Ouch, right? And I know this is true, and you know I'm not telling a lie, because you know deep down in your heart you're guilty of this too, on some level. And this happens in churches all the time. A friend of this congregation who was here this summer, after church, out in the atrium, she and I got to talking, and she told me about her congregation out on the West Coast. This is a true story. So what happened was this: the minister wrote a letter to their congregation sharing that he had been struggling with addiction. And he had just got sober, and he had been sober for a handful of months, and he had made the decision to use his own paid time off to continue his recovery as an inpatient. And so he said, I'm going to be gone for a few months, but we've taken care of everything. All of the contingencies had been planned for. How does this sound so far? Normal, right? And right away, this is what happened. Members of the congregation demanded an immediate congregational meeting to fire him. Here's some of the comments that they said. We don't want a drunk for a minister. How can we ever trust him again? Our church has his own problems. We can't take care of his too. How many of you want to belong to this church? I hear they're accepting new members if you'd like to. So bear in mind the truth of this situation. This was a minister who had served this congregation faithfully for nearly a decade, and all he did is say, I need help. And I started asking myself, if you can't admit that you need help in a church, where on earth can you admit it? He had done nothing wrong to that congregation, and yet, when he became vulnerable, they pounced. And now it's tempting to say, right? It's tempting to say, I would never do anything like that. But I think that's just the narcissist in us talking again. It's looking for the reflection we want to see. When we see weakness in ourselves and others, our instinct sometimes can be to rage or to scapegoat or to offer shallow optimism. But times like these, I think they demand a better question. A question like, what can we do? And so an answer came to me whenever I was listening to a conversation between all these eminent theologians last week in California. And amongst all these theologians was the Episcopal priest Becca Stevens, who was on the panel. Now, if you don't know who Becca Stevens is, she's an amazing preacher from the South, and she's the founder of Thistle Farms in Tennessee, which supports women survivors of trafficking and addiction. This is a very, very wonderful minister. And they were discussing what inspires people to do the work the world most needs. Like, what inspires you to do it? And so a lot of the panelists that you can imagine, they started sharing these really highfalutin responses. Have you ever heard someone share a highfalutin response and you just go, what does this even mean? But Becca didn't do that. She didn't take that temptation. Here's what she said, and I love it, and I'm going to quote her. She said, okay, I hear the question, but nobody ever asks the farmer what inspires her to milk the cows. It's her job, and she knows it, and she does it. That's what it should be like for all of us who think of ourselves as justice seekers and caregivers. We decide it is our job, and it happens in big ways and it happens in small ways, and I'm just going to do it. But it's scary, of course, right? You have to admit that. It's scary deep down. It's easier to focus on a litmus test so that others can fail. It's easier to pick out the speck in our neighbor's eye than to get up there and move the log on our own. I think this is the last story, and then I'm done. Yes, I promise. I was listening to this man tell the story of his baptism from like 60 years ago. He was from Tulsa, Oklahoma, old African-American guy, just a wonderful story, got baptized in a river. I love it, stories of people getting baptized in a river. I was baptized in a river. He said that just before the pastor laid him back in the river, the pastor bent down and whispered in his ear this line. Are you ready? When you come up out of this water, remember that it's your job to leave a little heaven everywhere you go. Dunk. So friends, I believe that is our job, to leave a little heaven everywhere we go. We may not be able to fix everything, and that is absolutely okay. But we can bless what we cannot fix. We can bear witness to pain. We can refuse to discard people when they are vulnerable. We can stay soft-hearted when the world tempts us to harden. We can show up for one another. And so my prayer this day for all of us is this: that we would be a community that pushes back against selfishness by seeking our own humility and our own kindness. That we might become those kinds of people for others. People who embody the kind of other-oriented service that this world very desperately needs. I pray for all those people in positions of authority and influence, in companies and schools and politics, that they would stop seeking arrogance or power or entitlement, but instead they would think service and mercy and the common good. So we may not fix everything, but we can bless this world, and we can bless one another, and we can leave a little heaven everywhere we go. Now, if you would, let's rise and sing our closing hymn printed on the blue insert, "Let There Be Peace on Earth." If you'll receive these blessing words, I invite you to reach out with your heart. If you came here with someone or next to your neighbor, you can reach out, take someone's hand. May the truth that sets us free and the hope that never dies and the love that casts out fear lead us forward together until the day spring breaks and all shadows flee away. I invite you to have a seat, enjoy the postlude, and stay for coffee.